Hey guys, welcome back. Your midnight movie this week is an absolute masterpiece of cinema. I wanted to cover a few films, and it's just a few. There are obviously hundreds of films by African American, black, or black diaspora filmmakers. And I thought I would start with one that really hit home for me, a movie that is not just, I think, a cultural accomplishment, but just a really great piece of film. And that is Malcolm X from 1992, directed by Spike Lee and starring the great Denzel Washington, Angela Bassett, Delroy Lindo, and I believe his name is Al Plummer Jr. Al Freeman Jr., who plays the role of Elijah Muhammad. This film, I remember it being a really big deal, at least a controversy when I was a kid when it came out. And it wouldn't be until some years later that I would actually see the film. And I was blown away by it. The cinematography, the color, the the costumes, the settings, obviously the acting and directing, the screenplay. This movie is a 10 out of 10 on every front. And, regardless of whatever your politics are, you can't help but watch this movie and just be absolutely pulled in. And as someone who, I actually had a really, how would you describe her? A really enthusiastic, eccentric civics teacher in junior high, at a junior high that I had a really tough time at. But I had this one teacher, Mrs. Bankston, African American lady, who was just a lot of fun. She made learning civics and learning history fun. She also would read us excerpts from the autobiography of Malcolm X in class. And it was a real learning experience, certainly for me. How old was I then? Like 10, 11? I don't remember. But we were all young kids, a group of, you know, you know, just a diverse mix of kids. We were Chicano, we were white, we were black, we were Asian. And the excerpts that she read, sometimes would be, I mean, more often than not, would really be heavy, heavy stuff. But she really helped drive home through reading those excerpts of Malcolm X's autobiography the human toll that it takes. But also, it gave us an insight into what formed Malcolm into the leader and the activist that he was. And yeah, if you can, if you're interested in these things, read the autobiography of Malcolm X before seeing the film, or watch the film, and then read the book, and then watch the film again. I had watched the film, oh man, maybe 20 some years ago, and that was when I rewatched it after having fully read, and really at an older age comprehended the autobiography of Malcolm X. The movie hit that much harder. Spike Lee really and his team fashioned so much of the film from the autobiography, and they did a beautiful job. Like it's you. I think the mistake people make is they assume that Malcolm was one note, that he was this angry guy, and certainly there was anger there. But if you, I think, watch the film objectively, and for sure, if you read his autobiography, you understand where that anger came from. You get a sense of, understanding, he as a child watched his father, who was, I believe his father himself was an activist of sorts. His father was killed by some white supremacists, and his mother was denied the money from the insurance policy, and they were left destitute. Then the government sends in the welfare folks, and this team of welfare agents basically dismantles his family. Sends his brothers here, his sisters there, him with some other family, and essentially drives his mother to madness. In fact, I think that is the first chapter of the autobiography. It's called Nightmare, and it is a living nightmare. That's how it starts. So this is an intense film. It was an intense life led by Malcolm, um, but there were bits. Obviously, the man had friends. He had his wife Betty. So there were parts of his life that were punctuated by goodness and love and joy. And what I think is so remarkable about Brother Malcolm is you see uh, he's really a self-made man. He transformed himself through knowledge. He spent time in prison because he had kind of become a hoodlum and got wrapped up with some gangsters and some gambling debts, and made some poor decisions, which landed him in prison, which then led to his meeting a member of the Nation of Islam, and from there, he kind of straightened up. Like it's the encounter with Islam, or at least that particular version of Islam at that time, uh, really transformed Malcolm into a seeker of knowledge, not just of sort of religious knowledge, but the man became a voracious reader. He became self educated. He really built his vocabulary, his diction, his knowledge. And you watch any archive tape of this man, and he is a force. And I've always been impressed by him. Uh, Over the course of the film, obviously, we see these things. We see this transformation. We see him become a leader within the nation. We see him really developing just this razor sharp mind that is able to articulate the hypocrisy of how the law, protection of rights, is applied or misapplied within the United States, how it is completely applied differently to obviously black people than to whites. And uh, again, you can't argue with the guy. Now, of course, there is the aspect of the Nation of Islam that holds white people as devils, and so on and so forth. Which as a person of conscience, I don't think anybody can get behind. You can't demonize an entire race of people. And within the film, uh, there's the moment, and I'm glad that they kept this, because unfortunately this moment came towards the end of Malcolm's life, where after he was, I believe, suspended from the Nation of Islam for comments he had made about JFK being assassinated, as it being part of America's chickens coming home to roost, and that the assassination itself being a product of white violence, that the white violence itself always turns against you, always turns against the people that perpetuate it. Well, it really damaged his reputation. It really hurt him, and he was suspended. From there on, he went to Mecca, and he did the pilgrimage, the Hajj, and he gets to Mecca, and what do you know? He sees people of all races, colors. He sees white people. He sees white Muslims, and it forces him to reconsider his position on white people, on Caucasoid people, on European people. And to his credit, again, Malcolm may have made mistakes, he may have made errors. Find me someone who hasn't. Uh, he was an intellectually honest man, and he was like, okay, maybe I need to reassess this. Maybe not every white person is the same as the white people that dismantled my family, that disenfranchised me and my people. Maybe some of those whites of conscience that I dismissed as white liberals that would only do more damage. And of course, we could talk about that. I think he made some very good points. Malcolm doesn't fall delicately or easily onto the left-right axis of American politics. And I think that's precisely because he is an independent thinker. He was an independent thinker. So there were ideas that he certainly was suspicious of the state, which is great. His suspicions of white people became more nuanced and seemed to have changed towards the end when he met other brethren that were Muslim and white. He, I think he did have some points about maybe some white liberal programs and ideas, while they might have been well intentioned, uh, from his point of view, as I understand what I've read about him and his beliefs, and that it did not lead to self determination and self reliance and independence. And those are things that I really admire about Malcolm. Uh, that he wasn't looking to the state to give him his rights or to give his people his rights. That to simply to acknowledge, to respect, protect, and defend the rights that were intrinsic to him as a human being. And uh, I think those are my takeaways from him as a person. All of these things that I've just mentioned, I know that just sounded like I just gave you a book review of the autobiography of Malcolm X, but it is just as accurate as a review of Malcolm X. This movie that Spike Lee did, and again, this is, this is a young Spike Lee doing this film in 1992. Just the ambition of it. He, towards the end, had to raise a bunch of money to sort of bring it to the finish line. He had, people like Janet Jackson, Michael Jordan. He went out and said, "Look, guys, in order for me to do this the way I want to do it, I need the money to finance it." And people came through, and I think that's awesome. It's another testament, I think, to any artist or someone who's trying to build something. Sometimes you have to ask. The worst thing they can say is no, and he got it funded. And this movie was criticized. I do remember this it being criticized for its length. I think it's like 3 hours and 20 minutes, something along those lines. It didn't feel like 3 hours and 20 minutes to me. This is an age where people didn't make movies that long. Now we're sort of in an age of where people will watch 2.5 hour Avengers movies and not even blink. But this is a sort of a historical biopic of a very important, iconic American an American icon, basically an American icon, an American uh, activist. And man, just Denzel absolutely transforms. The If you could go in onto YouTube and look up footage of Malcolm X and then look up clips of the film Malcolm X, I mean, it's almost indistinguishable. The the coloration and the lighting, I know I've mentioned that before. These are things that we sort of just take for granted in a digital age. And I'm not necessarily happy with how films necessarily look. I mean, it depends on who is doing it. But there's this, more often than not, there's a video gamization of cinema that I absolutely don't like. People like Chris Nolan don't do it. Tarantino doesn't do it. Robert Eggers doesn't do it. Jordan Peele doesn't do it. And Spike Lee definitely doesn't do it. There's something on top of just the beautiful execution of every aspect of this film. But there was this something about the color and the filters that were used at certain moments, almost like a sort of a softer look, which is an interesting choice for a subject as intense as Malcolm. Um, but it lends a air of what's the word I'm looking for? I won't say divine, but a sort of almost supernatural air about this incredibly articulate, forceful personality that was Malcolm. Delroy Lindo is another great actor that's in this film. He was fantastic in Sinners. I don't know if you saw Sinners. Sinners was my favorite film of 2025. I haven't reviewed it yet because, frankly, everybody's talking about it, and I'm trying to break through this algorithm. So at some point, I will talk about it. But Delroy Lindo's been around a long time, and he plays a gangster that Malcolm gets wrapped up in when Malcolm was in his hoodlum days, and he's excellent. Again, he's not there for but a short time in the film. You have the great Angela Bassett, who plays Betty Shabazz, Malcolm's wife. And again, what can we say about Angela Bassett that hasn't already been said? Just an incredible, regal, just a regal, quiet power about this woman and her portrayal of Betty Shabazz. Not to mention everything she's ever done. Angela Bassett is just friggin' incredible. The gentleman who plays Elijah Muhammad, who was Malcolm's first teacher in Islam, he plays the character of Elijah Muhammad, and he's another one. Like, man, the casting in this film, it's incredible how much the actors really look like the figures they play. And L. Freeman Jr. just nails it. I've seen some archive footage of Elijah Muhammad, and yeah, the voice, everything. I mean, again, that's the job of the actors. But whether it's Denzel as Malcolm, or it's these incredible actors doing, the smaller, I shouldn't say smaller, supporting characters throughout Malcolm's life. There's no fat on this film at all. There's never a moment where I was bored. I really wanted to see what was going to happen to this dude. You're just fascinated with just the difficulty he's really born into. Makes some really wrong choices. Gets into prison. Starts reading voraciously. Starts reading philosophy. Starts reading comparative religion. Just really just goes for it and becomes this incredible cerebral figure, and just steps onto the world stage and holds a mirror up to both the United States and the world, calling out its intellectual and moral dishonesty, its hypocrisy, for the betterment of his people, and then ultimately for humanity, for human beings in general. This is a beautiful movie. It is beautifully written. It is beautifully directed. It is beautifully acted. There's even a very young Giancarlo Esposito who he's probably in my top 10, maybe top 5 actors of all time. Giancarlo Esposito, you guys may know as Gus Fring from Breaking Bad. He was recently in I'm trying to remember I think was it one of the newer Star Wars series. He plays one of like the former Sith or like Sith in exile. The guy's just fantastic. He shows up as a younger man in Malcolm X as well. So this film is peppered with these incredible black actors, these incredible black thespians that to this day are still working and just giving us incredible work. Malcolm X has the gravity and the weight of a great production of Shakespeare. It really is. And to think, Spike Jonze is a type of genius, without a doubt, to have achieved this at the age that he did. And the dude just keeps on doing it. I think Malcolm X is probably my number one favorite of his. I like The Five Bloods. That's another one you should watch. I believe it had been on Netflix for a while. I'm not sure if it still is. And then there's one more from Spike Lee that was really good. Damn, I'm blanking on the one. I want to call it Super Clan Man, but it's not Super Clan Man. That was a pilot I did a few years ago, if you can believe it. God damn. If I can just get his filmography. Holy shit, kids. Okay, here we go. Black Klansman. That's right, Black Klansman with John David Washington, Denzel's son. John David Washington, he's fast become one of my favorite actors too. He was great in Black Klansman. He was great in Tenet. I love the guy in pretty much everything I've seen him in. But yeah, those are for sure, if you are brave enough to just open yourself up to some incredible cinema, maybe to some challenging content that you might not be used to, I cannot more highly recommend Malcolm X by Spike Lee from 1992. It is 10 out of 10. And whether it's Black History Month or not, this is a movie that I've been returning to every few years. I've just watched it. It is a masterclass in every aspect of filmmaking. And as someone who is doing his utmost to learn as much as I possibly can to put into my own films, I think Malcolm X it's an epic. I don't know if Spike Lee intended it to be, for as much as it is a biopic, it is historical, it is just epic in its scope. So, yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below. I think this is an absolutely fantastic film. Let me know, is there anything like this film? Maybe any other Spike Lee films that you'd like to see me review, either for this Black History Month of 26 or just in general. Let me know in the comments below. And yeah, check out Malcolm X. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.